So another person wanted me to talk about Karl Barth a bit more, some more Karl Barth content. So in a recent community post, someone asked, I believe, about the Karl Barth's approach to the virgin birth, which I'm going to talk about today. Many Protestant theologians during his day rejected it, but Barth insisted it was actually a necessary sign of the incarnation, kind of comparable to the empty tomb in his thinking. So let's explore why. So, as I just mentioned, Barth stood apart from many of his Protestant contemporaries. So, Emma Brunner, Wolfhard Pannenberg, Jürgen Moltmann, Rudolf Bultmann all rejected the virgin birth as either basically unnecessary or mythical in a particular sense. But Barth actually affirmed it quite strongly, the virgin birth. So, why? Importantly, he didn't affirm it for the same reasons contemporary evangelicals tend to do so. He wasn't trying to defend like biblical inerrancy or infallibility or anything like that. What Barth was trying to do was he saw it as a critical theological witness. The virgin birth for him attests to the miracle of God becoming human. So without the virgin birth, Barth argued, the incarnation would lose one of its essential markers, basically, or signs or witnesses. Now, in a very Barthian way, while he trusts that the virgin birth occurred in history, he doesn't think that it's provable as an event historically, similar to how he describes the empty tomb, which I plan to actually address in a separate video on its own. So he believes it happens, he trusts in it, but he doesn't think it's actually something that anyone can prove using the tools of history. So 2. Barth is very clear that the virgin birth does not imply Jesus is like a physical or biological son of God. So in his Church Dogmatics 1:2 and then later in 4:1, he carefully distinguishes the creedal phrase conceived by the Holy Spirit from begotten by the Holy Spirit. Okay? Jesus was not born from some kind of like divine human sexual union or something like that. The Holy Spirit is not actually the father of Jesus in a biological sense, or in any kind of sense that would be related to that. Nor is Jesus's body a kind of fusion or mixture of divine matter with human matter, or something like that. This is actually what the church has historically and emphatically denied, without mixture or confusion of the two natures involved, right? So Christ's body is fully and truly human. For Barth, this approach avoids slipping into mythology in a kind of negative sense, stories of God's fathering children through human mothers. Instead, the virgin birth for Barth emphasizes that Jesus' existence is a kind of unique, creative act of love and grace by God. So what does the virgin birth actually mean for Barth positively? He describes it as a direct and miraculous act of God's creation, creative activity. Jesus was formed by God in Mary's womb without a father. This was obviously not human reproduction. This is not how reproduction works at all. But it was, for Barth, an apocalyptic event of divine initiative erupting into history to disclose the reality of God. In this very event, Mary herself is then sanctified as the mother of God, not because she had some sort of innate divine power, but because God had chosen her and given her a capacity she could not generate kind of on her own. So it is perfectly proper to refer to Mary as God's mother, Theotokos. So Barth actually agrees with Catholic dogma here as a Reformed theologian, and so do I. Although he'll depart when it comes to veneration, which I have kind of mixed feelings about. But Barth stresses the virgin birth is just not about biology. It's about grace. It's about God acting in a supremely apocalyptic way to bring the Son of God into human history, to disclose what God is really like. Now, Barth will also connect this to his broader theology of time and eternity. So he insists that Jesus was not begotten in time. In other words, the incarnation does not mark the moment when Jesus suddenly becomes the Son of God or something like that. The eternal Word was always existing as the one determined to be incarnate from before all ages, what Barth actually calls the Logos Incarnandus. So I think it is best to read Barth here as rejecting a certain conception of the Logos Asarkos, a word without flesh. Why? Because for Barth, he sees in God's eternal plan, the Son has always already been oriented toward becoming incarnate. Okay? So the virgin birth does not create Jesus's sonship. Instead, it reveals in history what that has always already been true about his sonship from eternity. Now, finally, Barth himself explains this in two famous passages from his Church Dogmatics. For one, in a section called "The Way of the Son of God into the Far Country." So the first way he talks about this is, as we were already kind of hinting at, rejecting physical sonship with Jesus. He says that Barth says that neither the New Testament nor the early church ever thought that Jesus' sonship in terms of God literally fathering a child or something like that. Rather, the virgin birth is about the eternal Son becoming human, and how the eternal Son becomes human, not about how he became the Son of God, since he has always already had that. He has always already been God's Son. Second way, within this wonderful section in Church Dogmatics, which I would recommend everyone read, and I'll remind you what that section is called. So it's in Church Dogmatics 4:1, the way of God, the way of the Son of God into the far country. It's an incredible section in Barth's Dogmatics. So second part of this, the virgin birth as a kind of sign or a witness or a signal to something else. Barth calls the virgin birth a sign because it marks the uniqueness of the incarnation. It's a miracle of divine omnipotence in which human initiative is kind of taken off the table. Just as the empty tomb is a sign of the resurrection, the virgin birth is, for Barth, the sign of the incarnation. Okay? So Barth even warns that if we overlook or outright reject this critical sign of the virgin birth, we risk losing sight of the seriousness and reality of Christ's divine sonship disclosed in the midst of history. So let me just sum things up then in conclusion. Barth differs from many of his theological sort of contemporaries by insisting on the virgin birth being true. He rejects any sort of mythological, in a negative way, or biological explanation for this. He frames it instead as a creative act of God, a sign or signal or a witness of God's grace, and a witness to the incarnation itself, of God becoming human, of arriving in that particular way to disclose what God is really like. For Barth, the virgin birth, while unprovable, is indispensable for the faith, not as a proof of Jesus's sonship in relation to God, but as a visible sign that God has entered our humanity in a wholly unique and gracious way. So in short, the virgin birth for Barth does not explain the incarnation, it points to it. It's witnessing to it. It's a marker or witness, sign of God's miracle of the incarnation. So that's a little bit about what Barth thinks about the virgin birth. I hope this was helpful, maybe insightful, for some of you who may have been thinking about this topic in the past or currently. But please don't forget to leave a comment, or if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, leave a like. That would be awesome. And with that, this has been Apocalypse Here, Christianity you can live with.